everybody. My name is Nyemade. I'm the Chief Content Officer for AllGo. I'm so excited to bring you another episode of Love Handles All. And today I have with me a fabulous couple. I have Sossity and Max. Hello, how are you both doing?
Hi, good.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Before we begin talking about your love story, do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about you each individually?
Sure. You want to go first?
Yeah. I am a queer artist, event producer. I've been producing grassroots queer art in Portland, Oregon for 20 years now. Everything from drag, dance, cabaret, live music, and theater. So that keeps me very occupied. And then my day job, I work for the county.
Nice.
And my name is Sossity, like you said, and I'm a writer and a sensitivity reader and a communications consultant and lots of other things. A poet. I did used to produce events as well. I ran an open mic here called Dirty Queer for about 9 years. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also currently doing a little data entry for the county. So just trying to
just multi-hyphens.
Yeah, yep.
Make it work.
Make it work.
Love that. And so how long have you two been together?
It was 13 years. Let's ask.
14
years.
Yeah, it'll be 14 in May.
In May, yeah.
Oh, happy early anniversary. So of course, how did you meet?
At my open mic.
At Dirty Queer. I was at the second ever Dirty Queer. Mm-hmm. And it started very small and it got very awesome very quickly. And so I heard about it soon. And I went and I read a poem I had written that was my undergraduate. I started out studying electrical engineering. I didn't end that way, but I was taking a lot of physics classes. So I had this dirty poem about physics. And I got up on stage and I was like dressed all dapper. And it was very clever and sexy and nerdy, and that caught someone's eye.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But at the time I was dating rather narcissexually, so I was dating other like masculine, queer, non-binary folks mostly. So
I figured I'm not on their list, so we'll just work together.
So yeah, I was also producing events, and so at some point I had a big show and ended up hiring Sossity to MC Freak Show with Go-Go, and so we worked together professionally, and that was great. And that was like a few years we knew each other just through being event producers.
And during that time, Sossity, you had a thing for them?
Oh yeah. I mean.
But you didn't yet because you were still dating others.
Yeah.
I didn't notice you in that way.
Yeah.
And so
not for lack of trying.
Well, I think your flirting was too subtle.
Yeah.
I think that was also happening a little bit. And so I had been dating a lot and making interesting choices a lot. And and I was talking to my good friend, and who is also an ex, of course, because we're queer. And I was dating, I dated an Australian, who lived in Australia. I dated like someone that lived in California. And I just like dating people that were very unavailable. And I was like, hit a wall. I was like, I actually am ready for partnership. Like I'm ready for this big thing. And I want someone that meets me. And I need to stop making the choices that I've been making that are like ending in dead ends, right? Mm-hmm. And so I had this like epic, probably 2-hour process session with my friend Jen. And I was like, oh, I need a flow chart. You know, like I just initially was like in my pocket. I just need a little flow chart, put in my pocket, say, are they emotionally available? Do they live in Portland? The answer is no. Keep walking. I don't care how they are.
Just
keep moving, you know?
Yeah.
Ended up being this whole epic thing where it was like, oh, there's more than that. So I got really clear on what I wanted. And she made me this beautiful piece of art flow chart and sent it to me in the mail. And I put it up on my wall. And right around that time, you finally got to that point where you were like, I need to bonk this person on the head. I need to be so more obvious.
Yeah.
And so you flirted with me
like there was no question that time if there's flirting.
No, I wasn't just being charming.
I think I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a little like bit on like what events people could come to and what they should come to come flirt with me.
And I was like, noted.
Thanks.
And I think I just tipped over and then walked away. I just, like, couldn't handle it. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And so that happened like right around the time that this flow chart arrived in my life, and I put it up on the wall. And then that night I had this dream about Sossity that was like super, super like deeply connected and intimate. And like, it was like we were holding hands and just like sitting together. And there was a sexual spark, but it was like, so there was like this depth to it that was so intense and like a knowing. And I woke up and I was just like, whoa. And it totally shifted everything.
Yeah.
Like how I saw her. And then of course I ran into her that night.
Of course.
At an event because
you were really weird.
I was so cool.
Oh, were you super awkward now? Because you were having feelings?
I had no idea why. They were just like, I didn't know they'd had a transformative dream world experience.
Were you worried that because you had flirted so strongly that was what was causing them to act weird?
I will say that throughout my entire adult life, the people that have approached me and asked me for a date have been very, very few. And when I ask later, they tell me because I'm really intimidating, which is a you problem, not a me problem. But
right.
So I was like, okay, the Scorpio too much. Maybe it was too much, or maybe they're still not interested. And so they're trying to be cool, but they don't know how to. So I didn't know. I just was like, okay, well.
Oops, or something.
Yeah.
And so then I processed with my friends to be like, and Sossity was in a primary partnership at the time. And so I was like, does she fit my spreadsheet choices? Like, is she emotionally available? You know? So I processed it like, well, let me ask her out. But at that point, I wasn't like the most direct communicator ever. So I was like,
it was very vague. It was like, maybe you want to get a beer and talk about stuff.
Nice.
I went to my partner at the time and I was like, I think maybe Max just asked me on a date. I can't tell. They used the word intriguing, but so.
Well, and I was friends with your partner and she photographed a lot of the shows I produced, and, you know, we all knew each other. So, but
she was like, if it is cool, like,
well, I was like,
find out.
Typical Sagittarius. I was like, I can commit. I don't know if it's a date or not. I just want to see. And I did have questions, and we did that thing on a date not date where you're like, I'm going to share about my polyamory. I'm not going to assume that you want to know, but I'm going to share about it.
Yeah.
We're just comparing notes, right? We're friends and colleagues.
And then you were both okay with it?
Yeah, you specifically said I am emotionally available like 3 different times. This switch was like, yes.
I hadn't seen the flow chart.
No, you just needed me to know that.
So yeah, we went on a couple more dates, and it was it was amazing.
Yeah.
And my partner and I split for our own reasons, that 2 separate events. But yeah, now it's been almost 14 years.
13 years. And like, so do you, because I noticed you mentioned primary relationship before and polyamory. So are you both currently still in a polyamorous relationship, or is it just the 2 of you for the past?
It's just the 2 of us and our muses. Really, we joke that the other primary relationship we each have is with our muse. Like, we definitely have to have some compersion there because there's different needs and agendas and schedules. But in a pandemic world, dating other people, and I'm Demi, so I don't move fast even without a plague. So we still identify as polyamorous individually and as a couple, but we're not currently seeing anybody else.
Nice. So I love your dating story. I love dating stories in general and how people come together. Let's talk a little bit though about like your past for you individually. Because part of AllGo and our mission is to let people know that everyone deserves love, and knowing that, you know, people, especially when they're younger, sometimes have a harder time because they don't see people like themselves. What was your dating like for both of you growing up before you found each other?
First, it'll be faster. So my list is a lot shorter.
Hey, go ahead.
I've actually been some version of polyamorous or non-monogamous since the lesbian couple that brought me out in the early 90s. And it just makes sense. Like I need to be able to be my own individual self. And when I partner, I'm much more long-term. I'm not going to move in with you for at least 3 years, but I'm probably sticking around for a long time. So first partner, abusive. Gonna go right past that story. Second partner, good person, very good person, had a lot of their own stuff, their own body stuff, and it intersected with mine in some ways that were really not great. Like when we got together, I was the smallest I'd ever been in my life. That wasn't involving bulimia. And I was in my early 20s and I was biking everywhere and dancing 4 nights a week and not really eating very much, and it wasn't necessarily a healthy size.
Right.
And then as we were in partnership and my range shifted, that it just, you know, people's stuff bang up against each other, and they didn't know how to deal with their own body image stuff, and it just snowballed. And the partner after that, who I was with when Max and I started dating, was very fat positive, but not very connected in their own body. I just kept running up against situations where even people who weren't just about like, oh, you have such a pretty face, must have heard far too many times, couldn't really fully meet me where I'm at. And you know, I'm a survivor, and I've recovered from eating disorder and lots of things that are going to be familiar to a lot of other fat folks. And one of the reasons that Max and I click so well is that I knew before we ever started dating where they stood on things like fat liberation and, you know, radical awareness and working on your stuff. I'm also disabled. Like I would not have necessarily guessed that somebody 11 years my junior would show up not needing any 101. And it was and remains a really beautiful thing. Like when they don't get it, they ask. And when I tell them, they listen and they go do their own homework and they work on their own stuff, and we talk about things out loud. And I can be completely naked and completely vulnerable and completely honest. And that's crucial. And I never had that before. You know, it's really hard to be that with someone. We all have so many tender places, a lot of protection going on. So yeah, I'm really, even if I wasn't Demi, I'd be real slow to date because I gotta see how you move through the world before I trust you with this.
Right. Yeah. And so it sounds like, you know, you thankfully have had a journey to get to a place of acceptance with yourself, but sometimes they're met with relationships where they hadn't gotten there, and it made it harder.
Yeah, or you know, when your stuff is like if you tell me that you love my fat body but you don't like your own, like fair, like I don't believe in you can't love someone else until you love yourself. It's all a process we're working on, and that's a lot. And I'm tired, and I just want to be able to just be fully me. So,
well, I'm so glad you found that in Max. Max, what about your journey?
we have really opposite journeys because the other thing that you didn't like really mention, like the length of all your relationships is like really long,
like 7,
like
9.
7 to 9 years.
Yeah.
And this is like literally Sossity is the first relationship that made it past a year mark for me.
Oh, wow. You went past a year to 13. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I came out at the end of high school and then went to a Jesuit university, but then also became a drag king superstar in San Francisco. So I had a really interesting duality of experience of being like this little tiny baby queer and being like the queerest one at a Jesuit university, but being like the littlest one in San Francisco and like pretending I knew what fisting meant, you know what I mean? Like, and then coming back to my straight friends and being like, you know, so I definitely had like a slower go of, you know, not having a lot of folks to connect with in college, but then came back to Portland, and then was just like a little baby queer in a candy store, and you know, was doing drag, producing shows, flyering, making out, dancing, just sledding it up,
living it up. Yeah.
Everything, no type, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I will date everyone that's shiny to me. And, and then I'm pretty shiny too. So it worked out. And it was really fun. But you know, I think when you make choices about who to date based on like how they dance and what they look like, you get specific kind of results that might not, you know,
lend themselves to longevity.
Yeah, you know, like that like high energy frequency social capital of like dance nights versus like what you're actually looking for in a partner long term might not be the exact same. So yeah, so that was definitely an interesting shift. But you know, for me, I think coming out at a Jesuit university, being one of the first, like one of the only queer folks, really activated me in terms of my activist journey. And I became an activist like because I sort of had to in a way because I was out and not a lot of people were yet. So that set me down this trajectory of then taking more classes on gender studies and queer studies and cultural studies, understanding my white privilege, understanding like the ways I do have privilege in the world. And so I think for me, that journey is just like never ends, right? Where you're like, okay, well, I remember buying Fatso by Marilyn Wan, like, you know, just being like, okay, I'm going to constantly be learning about where I have privilege and how I can be like the best version of myself in the world. So I'm not gonna like learn about fat liberation, you know, to get in someone's pants, you know, I mean, it helps. But like, it's just part of who I am and how I walk through the world. And we have different class experiences too. So that's something that I also was like examining and deconstructing, and we're talking about class all the time too. So we've got a lot of opposites. I'm 11 years older, come from a poverty background, oldest child, third adult kind of situation. Lots of long-term partnerships, fat, disabled, etc. We definitely have had to have some conversations, but I think that's important. I feel like we humans, we learn a lot in this place, right? Like, but the trick is to not be like a cycle of I'm mad at you because of this thing, and then we fight, and then we fuck, and then we just move on.
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, I think it's great that you guys have some growth from that, like things that you could let drift you apart, you use it as a growing opportunity and then communicate to bring you closer, which not everyone can do. But I think when you can do it, you get 13 years out of it, which is awesome.
You do.
And there's something to be said about your dream. Like maybe your short-term relationships didn't work as well because like there was something about you that was waiting for that person that you knew, you know, and then the dream happened. At least that's how it works in my hopeless romantic mind.
I mean, we talk sometimes about like, oh, if we could have met sooner, but it would not have gone well. If we had met sooner. I wouldn't have been ready for you. Like I said, I was brought out in the 90s. by a pair of wonderful lesbians, and then went right into the leather scene. And our cultural reference things, that's where it comes up the most. They're like, this pop song, and I'm like, I was in the woods.
Yeah.
A bunch of leather bags. I wasn't listening to the radio. I don't know.
I can imagine that would present some challenges, but also again some growth.
Yeah.
Speaking of challenges, did you guys run into any as far as like accessibility? I know, because you said you're fat and you're for fat liberation and you're also disabled. Have there been times where either of those things have hindered your dating, or you wish that something had been more easier accessible to you?
I mean, on an individual level, yeah. I like dance nights too, but if I got to spend 2 hours trying to track down the producer of the event and ask them if the space is accessible because they didn't put it on their promo flyer, or they said ADA accessible, and what they meant is that the door was a little wider than usual, and someone pulled a janky piece of wood up to the entrance, like, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people, if they're already intimidated, and then now they also got to navigate around a cane, or like I have multiple chemical sensitivities, and I've got chronic pain and arthritis, and I'm allergic to cigarette smoke, and like there's just all these things. And I think a lot of people want what comes simpler, or what looks like, we've been sold this mythology that there's our other half, and that when we meet them, they're going to totally get us, and we're not going to have to think about it anymore. And if they do get jealous, it's a compliment. And there's just all this weird toxic stuff that does not have anything to do with being vulnerable and being real and calling stuff out and being willing to listen and change. And so, you throw Demi in on top of all, just people just don't want to put in the work. They don't, I feel like it ties into, like, now with the pandemic, there's a lot of people that aren't in touch with me, that I think some of it is like they don't want to have the conversation about the choices that they're making compared to the choices that I'm able to make. I'm high risk for COVID, so I have barely left the house in years. Of course I have feelings about you with your unmasked face in a room full of people, and like, if you don't want to have that conversation with me, then I don't know what we're gonna talk. I'm not a shallow conversation person. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right that there is that work, and sometimes people feel like it's not, we're also the happily ever after moment and not what comes after that, right? It's just the moment you meet, the sparks fly, and that's it. But there's work that comes after that. Even if you are soulmates, even if you have like soulmate dreams, you still have to do the work after to make the relationship really work. So I'm happy to see that you guys are able to do that, and you guys are having a great relationship. I don't want to start any beef, but I do want to find out from you. Just a fun question I ask everybody is, what do you think each other's pet peeve is about you? Like the top thing that grinds their gears about you. More pet peeves, so it's nothing like deep, but
Yeah. I think it's hard to think of as we talk about it if it comes up. So I don't know that there's a mystery there.
There's certain chores in the house that I don't see.
Yeah, that would.
I'll give you that one. I was like, I'll tell you which one. I'll answer.
I'll tell you what bugs you about me.
I mean, for me, maybe I want to talk about things longer than you want to talk about them sometimes.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm interested to hear. I'm also curious. And it's not a beef thing. It's like, oh, there's an opportunity to work on something. Maybe the fact that I'm sure that they load the dishwasher wrong every time. It might be a pet peeve of theirs of hearing about it.
No, I think your pet peeve with me is
your pet peeve is that don't load the dishwasher. Yeah.
Correctly. And you have to load it every time. And I'm like, God, out of sight, out of mind.
Is it really loaded incorrectly, or are you just particular about the loading?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. We saw memes more recently. Like every couple, there's one person who loads the dishwasher like a Swedish architect and the other one loads it like a raccoon on meth.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I have a feeling
It's not
which
right
is
or
which.
wrong. It's efficiency. I don't want to run it or unload it more often than I have to. So,
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
you know,
Max, what was yours?
That's harder. It's easier for me to come up with hers.
Mm.
I think Sossity always sees the best in everyone, which is amazing. But sometimes it's like I have to take her advice with a grain of salt because she's seeing the best in people, but not actually what they're gonna do or the realism of what's gonna happen.
that's
Yeah.
become less true over the course of the pandemic, I will say.
Your
Or like,
ability to
should act like, well, they'll do this because they should, and I'm like,
Yeah, I've run out of a lot of grace in the last 3 years.
oh, sorry.
which is unfortunate, but I understand. I understand. All right, well, bringing it back to the love of it, what
Yeah.
are each of your top 3 favorite things about each other?
Max pays attention. When we used to go out in the world more often, like they know what might be a tripping hazard or what might be a not be able to sit there or smell. Like they're looking at the world through a disabled awareness lens, even though they don't need it for themselves. That would be one.
Sossity's sense of humor just gets me like right in the heart and other places. Like she's so clever and quick and just like we'll be watching some cheesy show and she'll just say the funniest thing ever. And I'll have to pause and I'll just be like, I can't continue with the show because that was just the funniest, most clever thing. And she's not very snarky very often, but when she is, it's like, oh, top shelf snark.
I love that when Max wants to learn something, they throw themselves into it. They're not like, oh, I wonder about. They're like library list, and spreadsheets, and books, and paying attention and researching, and like when you want to grok it fully, and not only for curiosity, but often because it's something that you want to do better or that you want to be able to do. Yeah, and your creativity, I would say, is the third thing. This person, like, oh, writing a musical would be interesting. Oh, look, I wrote a musical with like 21 songs and quality stuff. Like it's stuck in your head immediately. They're dedicated to their practice too.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, especially when we met, because we were like both event producers, and this might also be because my like Venus is in Capricorn, but Sossity does what she says she's gonna freaking do. Her follow through unrivaled. And I think, and that might seem like a little simple, but like for
that's major.
It's huge. I could probably count on one hand like time she forgot something, like memory, follow through, thoroughness, like, and you're like, you are dealing with chronic pain, you're dealing with all these things, and yet you're like one of the most thorough people I have ever met in my life. And it is like mind-blowing.
Yeah.
You know, like you will not drop a ball unless there is something like exceptionally happening that like will be throwing off your game. But you're
that's
like,
awesome.
I want a partner that like will change the world with me. And maybe that's right now it means decorating our house great or getting through a really hard move or, you know, but it matters when you're in it, you're in it in the long game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then I would just say like kindness. I just don't think you can ever like underestimate kindness. Like just be like, I'll break her favorite thing. I could break her favorite thing and she'll be like, okay, babe.
Aww.
Yeah. Like, oh my God. How are you so kind? I would be pissed if you
right.
I was really pissed when I broke one of my favorite things the other day. But yeah, I mean, you know, what is the priority? You know, and I all my stuff are everything I have at this point. I mean, I came from poverty. Everything I have, I've worked really hard to get, and I've probably had it for like 20 years or more. Everything's important to me, but at the same time, it's stuff.
Yeah. Oh, well, I love that. You two have been so great to talk to and to get to know. I feel like I could keep chatting forever.
Well, thanks.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up though, like I said earlier, sometimes it's hard, especially growing up, because you don't see people who look like you. And we really want to make sure that people know that love is out there. But if you could talk to the younger version of you, the 18-year-old you, what would you tell them?
That you don't have to settle. I think like a lot of people, growing up as a fat kid and a lot of other stuff, but like I understood myself to be fuckable, but I didn't understand myself to be beautiful. Like, and having a lot of worth wrapped up in whether or not somebody wanted to pay attention to me. And then if they did want to pay attention to me, I better like stick, because who knows if anybody else is gonna. That scarcity mindset and that like you're lucky if you get any love at all mindset. Yeah, I could have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of heartache.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah, I've been writing a song lately that's a little bit answering this question of like what I need to hear and what I maybe would have needed to hear. And it's really just about like, you're enough. You don't have to prove yourself, like just show up, just be yourself. And I feel like I'm just finally getting to a point where I'm not like feeling like I have to prove myself constantly all the time and do that like kind of in, at detriment to maybe my like mental health or my physical health or what I actually need. So that would have been a cool lesson to learn a little earlier.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the younger folks will hear that lesson. And the thing with getting older too is the growth and the learning. And that's always been like my thing with getting older, is like taking those memories, even though you kind of wish you had known better, thought differently. It is what it is. But if you learn from it, then it wasn't ever any time wasted.
I mean, I know what I know because of what I did. So
exactly.
It's impossible to untangle it that way. Yeah.
Yep. It's all weebly wobbly. But yes, thank you so much for joining me today. It was fabulous talking. And thank you all who watched at home. Hopefully you'll check out previous episodes, future episodes, subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to meet you.